Sri Lanka's most powerful news brand.
Hello and welcome to the weekend edition of Primetime News on TV1, coming to you live and direct from the Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Azra Hassan. Let's start off with a look at the headlines.
President to take management of national economy. Who appointed Arjuna Mahendran as governor of the central bank? Extension of the environmental license of the NOROCHCHOLAI coal power plant suspended. Earth embankment collapses, killing one in Kandy.
On to our lead story now. President Maithripala Sirisena says he will take over the reins of the nation's economic management this year. The head of state was speaking at a meeting in Kegalle today.
You are aware of what has transpired. If we speak about the economy of this country, there are issues pertaining to it with the international debt attached to the economy. You are facing economic problems as a result of this. For 3 years, I let the UNP handle the management of the country's economy. However, as you are aware, the people are facing severe economic problems. Therefore, 3 months ago, under my leadership, I appointed a National Economic Council to manage the economy of this country. For the past 2 years, the economy was managed by the UNP. However, I need to emphasize that from this year onwards, I will take the leadership in handling the economy of this country through the National Economic Council. This is to reduce the cost of living of the people.
Speaking to reporters today, Minister Susil Premajayantha commented on the appointment of Arjuna Mahendran to the post of the Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka.
The Commission directed 28 questions to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister responded to all 28 questions. Questions are as follows. In January 2015, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, MP, who had invited Mr. Mahendran to accept appointment to the office of the Governor of the CBSL, is this correct? The reply is as follows. The Prime Minister has signed this. What Mahendran says is correct. He was invited to accept the post of Governor. Who had extended the invitation? Was it the President? The second question. Under the Monetary Law Action number 58 of 1949, in Article 12 it says, the President will make the appointment of the Governor of the Central Bank based on the recommendation of the subject minister. The answer is, the former Finance Minister had agreed the most suitable person for the post of Governor is Arjuna Mahendran. The answer goes on to say, he recommended to the President to appoint Mahendran as the Governor with the agreement of the former Finance Minister. That is how Arjuna Mahendran was appointed Governor. It is clear in the Prime Minister's affidavit. Who invited Mahendran? Who made the recommendation? The President put a stop to the appointment for the next 5 years and appointed the present Governor.
One person died and 2 others were seriously injured following the collapse of an earth embankment in the Askiri area in Kandy.
The unfortunate incident took place at around 10:30 this morning. Police said 3 men were constructing a side wall when the earth embankment collapsed. The Kandy Fire Brigade, police and the locals made a valiant effort to rescue the trapped men. Half an hour after the collapse, 2 men were pulled out alive, but the third was not fortunate. The injured were rushed to the Kandy Teaching Hospital and the deceased was identified as a 44-year-old from Harispatwa. The 2 men have been moved to the intensive care unit. They are under observation, though they are out of harm's way. They are being treated for their wounds.
Good evening and welcome to the News First newsroom. I'm Ramesh Irugal Bandara. Now, 2015 was 3 years ago. 2015 was a year of many changes. We got a new president, a new prime minister, a consensual government, and it was also the year of the bond scam. Now, the bond scam has dominated the national discourse over the past 3 years because of its sheer magnitude. But that does not mean the sins of the past should be forgotten. For those in the administration who touted claims of fraud, malpractice and embezzlement from political arena to political stages, they seem to have forgotten the sins of the past because the public does not see any action being taken in this regard. So, for the benefit of them, here is a small reminder of the sins of the past. We of course begin by going back to 2004. In 2004, Sri Lanka was struck with tragedy, that is the Boxing Day tsunami. There was devastation caused island-wide, and to repair the country, there was plenty of money that was coming in the form of aid. And that brings us to helping Hambantota. Now, people in this current government, when they were campaigning for the presidential election as well as the general election, they claimed that there was a loss of around 84 million rupees through this helping Hambantota case. We even recall a former Chief Justice coming before the media and saying that he apologizes to the nation for the verdict that he delivered. This is something that we have not forgotten. From hedging deals, or rather, from helping Hambantota, we cross over to the MIG deal, a loss of 28 million euros, not rupees, 28 million euros. We all remember how there was claims of fraud with regard to the purchase of MiG aircraft from Russia for the Sri Lanka Air Force. We also remember the claims of 2 MOUs being present. We also recall how certain third-party companies that were involved in this transaction disappeared from the face of the earth when the investigations were going on. It is also widely believed that the death of our colleague Lasantha Wickramatunge was prompted because of his investigations into this very deal. From MiG aircrafts to Airbuses and Boeings, Sri Lankan Airlines. Now, we all remember how Sri Lankan Airlines was making profits and was the pride and joy of Sri Lanka as our national carrier. However, under the Mahinda Rajapaksa regime, there were changes in management that took place. There were cronies who were put in, there were relatives who took over the management, and in aircraft terms, it took a nosedive. And we don't need to explain the current state of Sri Lankan Airlines. Yes, the current administration has a role to play, but there was a bigger role played during the period that we are considering right now. From there, we switch to another deal, the hedging deal, a loss of 28 million US dollars. This was a gamble on part of the former regime that did not pay off. Loss to the country is $28 million. Imagine if the country had this money. Imagine what the state of Sri Lanka's economy would be today if this money was in the hands of the people. We move on to another saga which dominated the national discourse, which was the avant-garde dealings. Now, the Sri Lankan government lost out on a substantial amount of money because they offered these services that the Sri Lanka Navy is currently doing. In the past, it was done by a private firm. Now, we recall who was instrumental in forming such companies, and we also recall how weapons were issued for these companies. We also recall how floating armories were found with these weapons, but their serial numbers were not present. The people of this country remember all of this. From avant-garde, we move on to the Greek bonds, another gamble by the Sri Lankan government that was taking place under the former regime. The loss to the country, 3.8 billion rupees. What we did was we invested Sri Lanka's money in the economy of Greece, in Greek bonds. The economy of Greece tanked, and we ended up with nothing. From there, we also recall memorials that were built using public funds for the purpose of certain people's families. We recall how public money was spent for these purposes, but what did the public get from spending their money for these purposes? From there, we move on to a certain media channel. Now, during the elections, there were plenty of accusations that were made. They asked, how can a government employee start up something like this with a government salary? There were issues that were raised with regard to the base of operations of this particular company as well. The NOROCHCHOLAI power plant. Now, what is the first word that comes to your mind when you think of the NOROCHCHOLAI coal power plant? For me, it's breakdowns, because over the past few years we've been reporting on numerous breakdowns of the NOROCHCHOLAI coal power plant. During the campaign trail, there were plenty of people who made accusations that this was a used power plant that was palmed off to Sri Lanka. It has been 3 years since this government came into power. So why haven't these people who made these claims back then done something about it? Where are the investigations? Who has been prosecuted? From there, we move on to a case that has concluded, the silk cloth case. 600 million rupees of funds from the TRC was misused for this purpose, and this case concluded with this gentleman, a senior public official, Ladith Veeratunga, being put behind bars. Why? Because he simply followed orders from higher above. From there, we move on to another branch of the government, the Sri Lanka Transport Board, the SLTB. During the election campaign, during the election period, services of the SLTB were used, but the payments were not made. Those were the accusations that were leveled at the former government. We also can't forget the land dealings, the issues with regard to land and properties that were raised during these campaign trails. There was a plot of land in Mount Livenia that was linked to Yoshitha Rajapaksa. Now there is currently an ownerless mansion in Malvana that is linked to Basil Rajapaksa, former minister Basil Rajapaksa. These are all things that happened back then. We also cannot forget the atrocities that happened under the previous administration. At this point of time, I would like to recall the murder of Lasantha Wickrematunge, the assaults on journalists like Keith Noya, Poddala Jayantha and Upali Tennukon, the disappearance of Prageet Eknalikoda, the murder of Wasim Tajuddin, the murder of Roshan Chanaka, who died while protesting his right to the Employees Provident Fund. We recall the shootings that were carried out in Ratupaswala when they were asking for water. We recall the shootings that were carried out at the Valikada prison, the trapped inmates who were gunned down in cold blood. We recall the white man abductions. We recall the bombing of the Sirsa Media Institute. We recall the bombing of Sieta and newspapers like Udayan. The people have not forgotten. But it seems that the people who made these claims back when they were campaigning, back when they were in the opposition, they seem to have forgotten these things, because the people do not see any progress in these investigations. And frankly, it seems like the people are tired of waiting for this government to take action. It has been 3 years since the silent revolution took place, and as I said, it seems that the people are really getting tired. Unfortunately, the people who have made these claims have fallen asleep. I'm Ramesh Irugal Bandara. It's back to the studio for the continuation of the news.
Thank you, Ramesh. Let's now have a listen to comments made on the political stage.
The general elections and the presidential election will be decided after this election. You are aware of the situation we are in. We are 200% in favor of a UNP government. After this election, there will be some change in the joint venture. I always call on the president to accept this or give it to us. Either of the two should take place.
There is a crisis in government. The president speaking in Anuradhapura said this is not a place for pickpockets. Therefore, President Maithripala Sirisena will have to remove Ranil Wickremesinghe from the post of Prime Minister after the 10th of February and appoint a new Prime Minister. I wonder if the UN peers are walking in the nude. The Prime Minister recently spoke about the bond issue. He should not be speaking to the nation. He should in fact apologize to the nation.
The United National Party is successful in its election campaign. Some attempt to make political gains by slinging mud on something small like the bond matter. The people of this country are intelligent. There are other matters that need to be given priority. I would not give a major level of priority to the bond matter. Crimes of more heinous nature have taken place.
The annual revenue of the Dehiyatta Khandya Pradesha Sabha is 10 million rupees. President Maithripala Sirisena says the bond scam cost 20 billion rupees. Therefore, imagine the loot that should originally be the revenue of the Dehiyatta Khandya Pradesha Sabha. The revenue of 2,000 years has been looted. Arjuna Aloysius has given an apartment to Ravi Karunanayaka and rent for a month is 1.4 million rupees. If 1 month's rent was given to a person in Dehiyatta Khandya, he could have used it to build a house. Sri Lanka imports a majority of its milk from New Zealand. They never stopped rearing cows for this purpose. Do not be disappointed. We have bulls but no milk. The animals in parliament know only to fight. They don't give milk.
The report was made public. Since then, the UNP is in panic. They are like the serpents who struggle when kerosene is sprayed on them. They started to reprimand the president. The Prime Minister then summoned those who did so and asked them to stop it. There is a big story behind this. Ranil Wickremesinghe is not attempting to say such a thing did not happen. You might recall in his address to the nation recently, he said the government did not incur loss. Then why was a commission appointed? They all must be insane to keep beating the same bush. All of us, including the media, COPE, the president and all those advocating to protect public funds must be insane. Therefore, if there is any honest gentleman in the United National Party who have not committed any theft or fraud, they must intervene and cleanse their party from within. Then Ranil Wickremesinghe will also be cleansed. It cannot be prevented because he is the minister in charge of the central bank. He should at least step down as Prime Minister.
Yesterday, Chairman of COPE MP Sunil Handunetti commented on the COPE report being handed over to the Attorney General's department.
As chairman of COPE and an individual, I do not expect something good from the Attorney General. I say this with respect to the Attorney General's legal profession and intelligence. On the 31st of October 2016, Parliament sent the COPE report to the Attorney General. It has been a year and 3 months. The Attorney General did not revert with what action needs to be taken on the findings of the COPE report. So what would he send for this report? At least during this past 1 year, he should have sent something to COPE, Parliament and the Speaker. The Speaker should have told us, these are the recommendations of the Attorney General. That is why they say Parliament must convene and discuss about a special court. The first task of that special court is to take up the trial on this matter.
However, today, Minister Susil Premajayantha had something different to say on the matter.
The introduction of new laws does not mean that there needs to be a delay in civil and criminal cases taken up under the present law. Our view is the Attorney General as soon as possible must take action on the recommendations that have been mentioned based on the existing laws, including the Penal Code, the Public Property Act, the Securities and Exchange Commission Act, Prevention of Money Laundering Act. He must immediately take action to seize assets and money as well as suspend overseas travel. We request this from the Attorney General as a party. The Attorney General and the Ministry of Justice does not come under the President or any minister representing our party.
A seminar on New Foreign Exchange Act was held at the Chamber of Commerce yesterday in order to raise awareness on the new legislation.
There's an amnesty that has been afforded to a resident Sri Lankan citizen who remits any foreign currency to Sri Lanka and who has not declared this remittance, declared the foreign exchange to the Commissioner General of Inland Revenue or the Head of Department for Foreign Exchange before 20th November 2017 and has no pending case or court order. It's a pending case or court order, not investigations, under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, Terrorism Financing Act or the Bribery Act. You will not be subject to any other fee, tax, surcharge or levy if you remit it back, only a remittance fee of 1% which is payable to the IRD. It also seeks to maybe cover more darker sins than just the mere exporter who has kept money out of the country. Maybe it seeks to cover those who have done something a little bit more darker than that. because it says that it will be deemed not to be a contravention of the Money Laundering Act. You don't need to pay this 1% remittance fee also if you remit less than 1 million USD or if you invest the money in government bonds. Such foreign exchange that you remit back under the amnesty shall deemed not to be obtained by the commission of an offence under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, even if the same has been held outside Sri Lanka without the permission of the central bank. Another interesting point is that there is no restriction on repatriating the money back. So you bring the money in under the amnesty, you pay the 1% tax, you're pardoned, and then after that you can remit the money back out of Sri Lanka as well.
Newsfirst has reported on the Foreign Exchange Act on a number of occasions in the past and highlighted concerns raised by civil society.
When
considering if money laundering could occur through this act, we need to consider if money earned illegally in another country could be used to acquire property in this country. Such an individual could make an investment in a company or acquire other properties. We don't know how money is being earned abroad. Such persons could use the two new types of dealers to invest in something and in the process turn black money into white money. If that happens, our country will become a haven for such activities. There are very limited actions in this act to stop something of this nature. There are plenty of foreign exchange reserves out in the world that have been earned through illegal means. There's plenty of black money in terrorist groups and extremist groups waiting to be laundered. Through the provisions of this act, these groups could potentially use this money to invest in properties in this country, turn it into white, and then take the money out of the country once again.
How was this act brought in? This act was adopted undemocratically. This act was adopted with very few members present in Parliament. They formed a majority with the few who were present and then adopted this act hastily. We call on the government to reconsider this. We call on the President to call on Parliament to take this up when it reconvenes in 2018 and correct this mistake. We say to the President, those who are steering the economy of this country should not be allowed to amend legislation as per their whims and fancies. As citizens, we placed our trust in the President on the 8th of February 2015. And as citizens, we believe that the President can take the necessary decisions when it comes to the direction of the economy of this country.
The Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in the United States launched its dual enrollment program in Sri Lanka at an event held in Colombo yesterday. The program was launched with Gateway Graduate School, the higher education and professional development arm of the Gateway Group.
The official launch of the program, which will enable students to obtain a degree in aviation and aerospace, was graced by a group including the Vice Chancellor of Embry-Riddle's Asia Campus, Dr. Graham Hunt, its Director Christy Chatterjee, and Chairman of the Gateway Group, Dr. Harsha Alas.
Embry-Riddle is the world's largest and the oldest aeronautical university, ranked first for the last 15 years in US. And today, with the Embry-Riddle, we signed an MOU to introduce their dual enrollment program, where students can complete almost a year of their degree while they pursue their A-level studies.
It is reported the NOROCHCHOLAI coal-fired power plant does not have an environmental license at present. The director of the Central Environmental Authority for the Northwestern Province says the license was not renewed after it expired.
The Lakvijaya coal power plant at NOROCHCHOLAI adds 900 megawatts to the national grid through 3 generators using coal. An environmental license is mandatory to operate such a power plant as it ensures there is a minimum risk to the environment. However, the Lakvijaya coal power plant at NOROCHCHOLAI operates without a license at present. The license has expired and a new license has not been issued. I believe this is because a case is filed with the Supreme Court. So when the matter is being taken up at the Supreme Court, the recommendations must come from there and then a new license can be issued. On a number of occasions, Newsfirst highlighted the issues faced by the locals in the area due to the operations of this power plant. The locals suffer from various skin disease due to the ash spreading across a vast area, which has also damaged the crops. As a measure to this issue, a proposal was recently made to further widen the buffer zone of the NOROCHCHOLAI power plant. At the same time, All the engineers of the power plant signed and directed a letter on behalf of all employees at the power plants to the general manager of the Ceylon Electricity Board, highlighting the serious nature of this issue. It states when all 3 generators are in operation, the power plant releases 1,000 metric tons of fly ash on a daily basis. In addition, the power plant releases another 100 metric tons of solid ash as well. The engineers point out the ash was used for cement production based on the quality. However, in most occasions, the ash did not meet the required quality. Therefore, the ash, which also contains arsenic and other poisonous substances, are piled up in the premises of the power plant, causing serious health issues to the workers as well. The request they made for expert assistance to minimize the implications from dust and ash is yet to be implemented. In addition to the environmental issue, one of the 3 generators of the power plant is not in operation. Since the power plant was launched, its generators have gone off operation on more than 40 separate occasions. While the serious issues caused by one coal power plant are to be resolved, proposals were made in the recent past to construct another coal power plant in Sampur. Newsfirst continued to expose this attempt, and following the allegations made by civil activists, the proposal was dropped. Later, the government announced they would introduce LNG plants instead of a coal power plant. However, rather than implementing that policy, the cabinet proposed to build another 2 power plants in Trincomalee and NOROCHCHOLAI. The proposal tabled by Minister Ranjit Siyamalapitiya and Dr. Sarath Amunugama were rejected following the intervention of the President. However, there are groups who continue to advocate to promote coal power plants. Even though it was proposed that these power plants will be constructed with technology associated with clean coal, the technology itself is still in the testing phase. Countries such as Japan, China and Europe are gradually moving away from the use of coal, and experts say there is an attempt to sell those removed power plants to countries like Sri Lanka. In the recent past, the ministers and secretaries who made attempts to promote the dangerous coal power plants were exposed. The Ministry of Environment is one of the subjects vested under the President. The President, on many occasions, promoted the commitment that he reached at the Paris Climate Change Summit or COP21 with other world leaders.